Hello all benders and non-benders, and welcome back to Avatar Generations, and today we are going to be talking about one of our two newest powerful opponent characters, the new Chaos Special Element character, Goro. This character is a Fire Nation soldier, spear-wielding man with the Special Element status. Very cool stuff there, and of course, one of our two very first Peace Chaos powerful opponent characters. Before we get started, if you have not already, would appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe down below. Very much helps out the channel and lets me know that you are enjoying these guides. So let's get into what this man can do here, and what this man can do is a lot. So we'll take a look at his basic here. Hostile Assertion. Deals special damage to one enemy based on the caster's speed. Reduce skill cooldowns by 1 if volatile stance is active. Now just to remind yourself here, special damage is basically like elemental damage, where it will inflict the special debuff on the enemy for 2 turns. The special debuff basically blocks the enemy from healing, and at higher tiers can even prevent revive. So just something to kind of keep in mind there. And then, of course, if he's in that volatile stance, he reduces the cooldowns of his advanced. Speaking of his advanced, let's take a look at this thing because it does disgusting damage. Deals 3 hits of swift damage to all enemies, that means it scales on speed. Inflict a special debuff on each enemy that does not have a special debuff on them for 2 turns. Enter a volatile stance for 1 turn. So a few things to unpack there. First of all, this is a 3-hit AoE. So just kind of keep that in mind first of all. Next, it will inflict the special debuff if the enemy does not already have a special debuff. So this is kind of the move you use at the very beginning of the fight when you want to get those special debuffs out and block that healing. Nobody has it yet. You whip out this and try to inflict that on the enemy if you can beat that resistance check. And then enters a volatile stance for 1 turn. This can go up to 3 if you get him all the way up to level 6. I personally recommend. That's not a bad idea. Just saying. And what this does, it increases his speed by 20%, which will increase his damage. And then a 50% chance to remove elemental effects from all allies, and a 35% chance to counterattack when attacked. So basically, whenever he gets hit, he has a 50% chance to cleanse elemental effects from his allies, so some interesting little support stuff there. And then a very nice 35% chance to counterattack when he's attacked. That's pretty high, especially if you do mix in some counterattack sets to bring that up to 45%, maybe even 55%. Yeah, that's actually a really high chance. And just a reminder, when he uses his basic, as long as he's in that volatile stance, it reduces the cooldown of this. So even though it is a 5-turn cooldown, that can go down in a hurry. Just kind of something to keep in mind there. And then, his passive, Blood for Blood. Gain increased crit damage for 1 turn when entering volatile stance. Reduce damage taken by 30% if the caster is in either sideline slot. Counterattack when Goro is attacked if he is on the caster's team once per turn. So there's a few things to break down here. First of all, if he's in the volatile stance from his advanced, he gets additional crit damage. Very helpful there. Next, if he's in one of these side slots, either the left side or the right side, the damage he takes is reduced by 30%. Really encouraging for him to be in one of those slots. It doesn't necessarily mean he has to, but it is encouraged. And then whenever Goro is attacked, his brother, the Peace character, he will get a revenge attack. Not even just separate from his regular counters, he gets a revenge strike where he gets to use his basic on whoever attacked Goro. A really, really powerful passive here, and it gets even better because it has skill masteries. Mastery level 2. Permanently decrease resistance on enemies by 5% after the caster attacks. This can happen up to 5 times. So, total, you can decrease the enemy's resistance by 25%. Just a reminder, this hits 3 times. That's 15% reduction to all enemies right there. Just period, right out the gate, 15% damage reduction. Easy peasy. Mastery level 3. Remove defensive buffs from attacking enemies whenever the caster's team, not just him, but the whole team is attacked while volatile stance is active. So let's say you've got a Haru giving you some trouble. Whenever that Haru attacks, in theory, this will trigger and remove his invincibility, his skill nullify, anything along those lines. This can clean it off and make him nice and damageable again. I would say that it was, make a problem, solve the solution. But frankly, these guys released so close to each other. I think this was just always a plan for these two to kind of be the two sides of the coin here. And then his Master Level 4, enter a volatile stance for 1 turn whenever an enemy gains immunity, skill nullifier, or invincibility. So, this Master Level 4 and Master Level 3 is meant to synergize because, let's say, Haru gets his invincibility, triggers volatile stance from the Master Level 4, and then whenever somebody attacks, whenever Haru attacks, the Master Level 3 will trigger and cleanse that invincibility back off. Bonus points for the fact that you're now in a volatile stance, doing that extra damage, getting that extra speed, all that good stuff. A really, really cool set of levels here. And then of course, the decreased resistance makes it a higher chance to cleanse those buffs, to inflict that special debuff, and pretty much anything else you're trying to do with him gives him a higher chance of that working, and even your team can benefit from those resistance debuffs. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This man loves to be skill level 6. If you are spending your nature stones on the powerful opponent banner, you will get some good value out of this guy. And at this point, if you're trying to be any kind of meta viable, the powerful opponent banners are surprisingly good. You kind of don't want to sleep on those. Just something to kind of keep in mind there. So yeah, this guy especially goes up really well at level 6. You get the 3 turns of volatile stance. He tiers up real nice. He tiers up real nice. But let's talk about how to actually build this man. There's 3 sets to keep in mind, I'd say. You want to keep in mind attack, of course. Even though his stuff scales on speed, they also scale on attack. So attack is not something you want to ignore. Speed, of course, because he will scale on speed, both of his attacks do, and he can put out some damage at high speed. He can put out some crazy damage. And then probably the 3rd set you want to keep in mind is counterattack. It's not the worst idea in the world to make his counterattack higher, because if you get that 35% from the volatile stance, you get that up to 45%, 55%. At that point, you're at a coin toss. And whenever he's attacked, he can do that high damage attack right back. Lifesteal is also pretty good. If you don't have maybe a counterattack set, lifesteal is good. You'll notice I have an immunity set here. This is more so for the parts than anything, because the legacy set came with the attack percent on the map and the speed on the feather here. That's more so just for the stats than anything, because, 60% attack on this map is immense. If you do a 3-star, you're looking at 45%, so that's kind of what I've got. But as far as the sets go, attack, speed, counterattack, and maybe lifesteal. I say maybe because he's not the bulkiest guy in the world. He kind of relies on the death saves from his Relic and from Goro, but still, it can work. Of course, his supports, he's got a couple options here. Keep in mind, he's not a firebender, and there's a very important reason why I say that. The Hawk here, the Messenger Hawk, does not work for Goro. It works for Goro because Goro is a firebender. It does not work for Goro because he is a Fire Nation character, not a firebender. It's kind of interesting because if you read the Messenger Hawk, it says Fire Nation, but requires firebending, whereas the Komodo Rhino says Fire Nation, but only requires Fire Nation. An interesting little inconsistency there. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter because, like, the Yanagi here says Kyoshi Island, so I guess that's not really a thing, but just something to keep in mind because it confused me for a second there. Messenger Hawk does not work for Goro. In lieu of that, Komodo Rhino is pretty much universally the way to go. It increases his crit damage. Keep in mind that first attack, that AoE, does 3 hits, which means even if one of those crits, this will boost it up real nice. If you are maybe a higher level player who did some spending on Suki, the Unagi is also an option. The Unagi is very good for just increasing the raw damage of special element characters, but this is a turbo whaley support here, because the Unagi isn't even in like the base chance to get a support. This is a special thing that's only come around a few times. But if you do have that, that is an option. Komodo Rhino, though, is probably going to be the best because you're going to be running Fire Nation characters with Goro. You'll get the most bang for your buck with the Komodo Rhino, I think. And now, Relics. First of all, the Bonded Echoes Relic is his best one. Period. Reason for it is it says heal for 25% of max HP when at 25% or below. This can happen once per battle. This is a death save. This is just a straight up death save. If he gets hit down below, it will trigger this relic one time and save his life. That's good because he's not really bulky, and again, it kind of encourages you to put him on the sideline. This basically allows him to take a punch and keep going. Additionally, increases the damage of all soldier allies when the caster attacks. This is meant to very much synergize with him and his brother Goro. Whenever he attacks, he grants that damage buff. Now, I don't know if it's like per action, or if this actually triggers 3 times when he uses his AoE. It's a little hard to calculate that because it doesn't really explicitly show this stat, but it would at least do it once, and if you do get it maxed out, which I do recommend, a 12% damage boost is nothing to sneeze at because he does some damage, and even Goro does some damage. But let's move past that for a second here. Let's assume that you're not going for the Bonded Echoes. Maybe you just got a single copy of Goro. There are a few options. We, of course, do have the Burning Net here is not bad if you're able to get some rank 2 elements here, because this will actually allow you to stun if the enemy has a rank 2 element or higher. But probably the best free-to-play option here is going to be the Shearshoe Darts. The Shearshoe Darts you can actually get from the Timeline store, which is something to kind of keep in mind there. And if you look at the effect, it has a 60% chance to inflict Restrict on up to 2 enemies for 1 turn. This ignores resistance if the enemy has a debuff when the caster attacks on their turn. This will pair really nicely with his AoE because it attacks 3 times, it inflicts debuffs, and then you can get that Restrict, has a really decent chance there. So Shearshoe Darts, if you're going for a free-to-play 4-star option, gonna be his best one, I believe. Now, of course, you have some other standard options here. The Fire Paper Dragon is not bad. The Beach Umbrella is quite good, although personally I think the Beach Umbrella is served much better on his brother Goro. We'll get to that in the future. But the Beach Umbrella is a truly fantastic relic. It doesn't really play well on Goro because you want something that really increases his offensive abilities and gives him some survivability at the same time, which is what the Bonded Echoes is for. But that notwithstanding, Beach Umbrella is truly busted. I'm not sure I'd really recommend the Ice Frog. This one came with the Blue Spirit event. This is okay. It removes negative effects from the caster and permanently increases the caster's speed by 15% if a negative effect is present. It can be nice if, let's say, he got knocked down or stunned, and it does increase his speed, which does increase his damage. Again, though, Goro is not a bulky character. He can get one shot pretty easily. So, even though on paper this is useful, his best relic is going to be the Bonded Echoes. I'm just gonna say that straight out. Bonded Echoes is the best relic. I normally try not to recommend 5-star relics so hard. However, thankfully, it's a powerful opponent banner. You're guaranteed to get the relic every 10. So that's something that you can kind of keep in mind there. Besides, if you do have a Goro, you probably got at least 1 copy of this. And even 1 copy of this relic is better than most 4 stars solely because of that death save. So just kind of something to keep in mind there. Overall, this dude is crazy, especially when combined with Goro here, who we will talk about in the near future. The only thing that doesn't stack up with this guy is his sprite art, because look at this man. I mean, come on, maybe shrink the spear just a little bit, and get him a little bit up to snuff because it is comical over here. But that thankfully does not impact how well he plays, which is very well. So that is all we have for today. Let me know if you've been using the brothers down below, the Super Flameo Bros. They're good. They're really good. So yeah, and of course, Goro will be right around the corner here for an analysis video. We're going to keep this with Goro for now. But until then, we shall see you next time. Have a good one.